You're watching East Tennessee's first and only year-round sports talk show on television. This is The Sports Source with your host, John Pennington.
Good Sunday morning, folks. Appreciate you being with us for The Sports Source today. Hopefully you don't have a hangover from yesterday's game. We will have a jam-packed show, just information left and right. Might have some pretty interesting discussions today. Everything that's been talked about the last 24 hours or so, we're going to cover it, and probably from some different directions on this show. So stick with us. I think you're going to find today's show pretty entertaining, pretty interesting. We started, as always, first segment brought to you by good friends at Phil Cobble, Fine Homes and Land. If you have a home that you want to sell, and you're sitting there thinking, well, how great would it be to sell this thing before New Year's, before Christmas? It can be done. Phil Cobble, Fine Homes and Land. They are the group to call. They can provide you with every possible outlet to help you move your house, even by Christmas. 3 months. Phil Cobble, Fine Homes and Land. You see their information right there on the screen. Call them, email them. They can help you move your home in the next 3 months. Trust me, trust Phil Cobble, Fine Homes and Land. All right. And trust these guys, except for when they disagree with me. Bob Hodge, freelance contributor to the Knoxville News Sentinel. Will Overstreet, former Vol and NFL defensive end. Jimmy Hyams, host of the Sports Animals Sports Talk program, Monday through Friday. And right there, Chuck Cavaleris, Tennessee Golf Central, who mooched his way over to Kiowa a couple weeks ago on a freebie, but he covers the Vols here with us and has for darn near 1,000 decades. He's that old. All right. Guys, I want to tell people what we got coming up. I mentioned it. We got some headlines for you just to tell you what the topics for today, if we've got these. If we do not, that's okay. Apparently we're having some computer issues. There we go. O-line misery. We're going to show you a couple of tweets I got yesterday. Was Tennessee out-coached? We're going to do our necessary roughness segment and talk about play clock on that Florida field goal, play selection, some numbers that'll help you know your Vols and prepare for the rest of the year. Going to talk about the zone read scheme. Going to talk about the good defense. Talk about Muschamp's mouth. Lane Kiffin lost, in case you didn't know. We'll tell you why that's a bad thing for Tennessee. And then the Cavaleris line. All that coming up. Tennessee loses to Florida 10-9, second year in a row. The Vols lose to a Florida backup quarterback. I don't think they've done well against backup quarterbacks since they saw Marcus Outson as they left Tempe in '99. Disappointing loss. I understand why fans are disappointed. I don't get the anger, though, because for all the talk of, Tennessee, this was a gimme win. I didn't see it that way going in. Tennessee opened as a 1-point underdog at home. This was pretty much a pick-'em game. I don't see the outrage. I understand the disappointment. Don't get the anger. Jimmy, I'll start with you. You've done a call-in show this morning. Mm-hmm. What was the reaction that you heard?
There was some outrage, no doubt about it, with fans being upset about it. Can Butch Jones be a game manager? What's going on with the play call? They need to get rid of him. And we had just as many that called that said, hey, look, Butch Jones doing a great job. So it counterbalanced. But you did have a lot of folks who were upset about the outcome because of the anticipation. It kind of reminded me of what happened 2 years ago when Tennessee went against Florida, and a lot of people thought Tennessee would beat them, and they lost. And so anger is the first reaction that you have from them. Not patience, anger.
2 years ago, game day was here, and that had this year reminded me of that because the expectations were way out of whack. We've talked about that, and people thinking this is going to be an easy win, right. And then you get those high expectations, and you had all these chances, and you don't capitalize. That just makes it that much more worse when you lose.
Bob, what's my word?
And disappointment.
And you called me before the game
yesterday. I called you before the game. I was out. We were out tailgating, and the people that we were with, they were a couple of them that said, "Oh man, this is going to be close." But the majority of people that I was hearing talking to, that were talking to me, that I heard, sitting next to us, everybody thought that this was going to be a big win for Tennessee, and I thought you're setting yourself up for disappointment, and that's what you got.
Your thoughts?
I think overall, it is. People thought Butch Jones should have won this game. Every other time he's been into a game, people were hoping it got close, but they weren't expecting him to win. So I think that's where some of the anger is coming now from. Yep. I think overall, we've said this team has the ability to beat any of these SEC East teams, and it has the ability to lose to any of them. I thought they had a chance to beat this team by a lot because I thought this Florida team was mentally weak in the sense if they got down by a little bit, it was going to be over. But, you never took that advantage. You played your worst game you've played all year on offense, and you got beat.
Well, again, when you look at it, there were a lot of people yesterday, they should have won. I got this on Twitter. This is shocking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of people on Twitter say, well, Pennington, you're an idiot. Well, if that's the case, let me show you my tweets before the game. It tells you that even an idiot could have seen this coming. Here's what I had to say yesterday. You can see it there. Like the Vols 24-20 today, but a lot of folks are way too far into the easy win camp. A lot of talent on the Florida team that went 11-2 a couple of years ago. Gator offense, excuse the spelling errors, has struggled the last 2 games, but the defense has given them scores and short fields with turnover margin, which is what they did yesterday. So I said UT needs to get their best day out of their offensive line to keep Worley upright and to improve on a 3.3 yards per game average. Didn't do either of those, all right? Then, best guess, whichever team faces more 3rd and longs will be the team that loses the game. Well, Tennessee had 12 3rd and longs. 1 was a penalty, so I'm not counting that. 13 total. Florida had 10. Look, it was right there before the show, before the game. Said it. It's not like it took a genius to figure it out that this is going to be a close game. They got to do the things right. They didn't do the things right.
Yeah.
We said last week, we showed you the numbers that Florida has 9 drives on the year for touchdowns of over 45 yards. They still only have 9. You did what you can't do. You gave them a short field on a fumble. To me, I don't get the shock of it. But let's talk about the offensive line, which, again, I don't think that's a shock either. And people need to realize the only way to fix this is time, unfortunately. And you better hope that nobody gets hurt because you don't want to start from scratch with this group. This offensive line, to me, is just the root of all evil, so to speak. Guys?
I'm going to agree that the offensive line is about as bad as it can be. At the end of the game, there were people saying, hey, look, the offensive line got better at the end. They weren't getting the heat on Worley on that last desperation drive.
Yeah.
Because they were playing a prevent defense and they were rushing 3 guys, and if 5 can't block 3.
And then they finally got out of that and immediately started rushing.
Exactly. That was the point. And I have not seen this offensive line do anything well.
No, it hasn't done anything well. I mean, at times they are not getting beat physically. They are just letting guys go. There's one time in the game, the guard has his guy engaged, sees a guy flash. It's not his guy. No. Lets the defensive tackle go. The only guy who can pick him up then is the quarterback, and he got the quarterback. Yeah. So I mean, it's
he picked up the quarterback.
This wouldn't be a good offensive line in a below-level division right now. I mean, these guys are not anywhere close to being competitive in the SEC or in Division I college football.
Here's part of the problem too. You're running a zone read without a zone read quarterback. All right, in a mediocre offensive line, a zone read's supposed to be an equalizer, but that's if you're running the zone read, and if your quarterback's not running it, you're not helping yourself. So that's one of the big issues they've got. You're not running a true zone read like Auburn or Mississippi State. And that allows one other person to be involved in trying to stop the run against a below-average offensive line.
I don't think it's a big issue. I'll give you that. I think quarterback could be an issue. I think the receivers aren't doing their job yet.
They didn't get open?
Of course, they only got 2 seconds to get open before Worley's hit, which makes it a little tougher on them. You could spread that around. There weren't perfect play calls throughout the day, but to me, 99.9% is the offensive line. Let's say you are running the zone read properly. All right, so you got cutback lanes. Does that offensive line look like they're creating any kind of lane to cut back into? I don't see it.
I'm just saying it's compounding the problem.
Yeah. Part of
That's what I'm saying.
But to me, it's 99.9% offensive line.
Well, yeah, you don't have a good offensive line, so you don't help your offensive line by not running a true zone read.
Chuck, what's this team's record? Go ahead, Bob.
I was just going to say, to me, the offensive line sort of sums up its lack of game. They ran a couple of screen passes. If you're an offensive lineman, your job isn't to sit there and say, hey, I hope Jalen Hurd gets a lot of yardage. You go find somebody. Well, Tennessee's offensive line on screen passes either stands and watches or they run past people. I don't know where you're going. I had a coach tell me one time when I was in high school, if you're blocking for a screen pass, block somebody. You're not going to score running down the field without the ball. And that's what they do.
Well, here's the thing. I think you can start hanging that on coaches if they're still doing it at the end of the year or if they're doing the same thing next year. For now, you got a bunch of guys who've never played together, and you've not seen that. We said that all spring and all summer. Only team in the last 2 years to have to replace the entire offensive line. It's unprecedented in terms of the last 2 years. So there's nothing that you should say, well, they should coach them up. These guys are total green. I don't think anybody could coach them up. Chuck, I'm going to ask you this very quickly. What's Tennessee's record if they have even an average offensive line right now?
Well, maybe be one game better.
They're 4-1.
Well,
They're 4-1.
I don't know, maybe Georgia too, but I
Yeah.
mean, you definitely feel good about beating Florida because, face it, no matter what kind of plays you call, if you have got the least effective offensive line in the SEC, it's tough to call plays because they're not going to. A lot of them aren't going to work. So I mean, I think you beat Florida. I don't know for sure about Georgia.
Worley's not knocked out of the game. If you got an average offensive line, you may run the ball a little better. I think they're 4-1. They're 5 points away from being 4-1 right now. I think an average offensive line would be a huge step up, and I think it's worth 2 wins. Will, you were going to say something very quickly.
Just average, just a little bit step above. I mean, right now, this group, I mean, if you don't have a lot of guys to compete for it, a lot of these guys, if you had a deep group, they wouldn't be the guys starting. I mean,
That's right.
I don't know,
There you go.
you're saying it's just Young. I don't know if some of those guys have the talent to be the guy either.
Well, that's right. I mean, your guy starting at left tackle was a right tackle because the guy starting at left tackle got hurt, and he was a former walk-on. You got 2 freshmen. I don't think there are many options. It's not like, well, yank him and put somebody else in.
Exactly.
And that's what they inherited. Butch Jones had an interesting comment. I think it had a lot to do with the offensive line after the game, if we can put this up here. We are who we are. We have who we have. I don't know. He didn't specifically say that was about the offensive line, but I think we can do the math. All right, when we come back, some of your tweets from yesterday. Is the honeymoon over? Did it start? And also, was Tennessee outcoached? We'll discuss. Come on back.
Decks, dens, homes. Turn to Benedict Construction.